You know how everyone says technology is supposed to make your life easier? Well, not in my house. In my house, technology and pets don't mix, they clash. And it all started the day we brought home a brand new Roomba. It was supposed to be a game changer. My husband, Jack, was tired of vacuuming after our shedding champion of a cat, Whiskers. So, naturally, he decided that a little robot vacuum would be the perfect solution. Think of all the time we'll save, he said, proudly unboxing the sleek, futuristic device. But there was one thing Jack didn't consider. Whiskers wasn't just any cat. He was a certified drama king who believed every new object was either his personal toy or his mortal enemy. And the Roomba? Oh, it didn't take long for him to decide which one it was. The moment we turned the Roomba on, Whiskers bolted onto the couch, his eyes wide and ears flat. He crouched low, staring at the strange new intruder like it was a burglar wearing a neon sign. "Relax, it's just a vacuum," I said, reaching to pat his head. Whiskers, however, was having none of it. He hissed softly, his tail twitching like a metronome on overdrive. Meanwhile, the Roomba hummed to life, beeped cheerfully, and began its maiden voyage across our living room. Jack stood proudly with his arms crossed. "See? It's working perfectly. No more cat hair tumbleweeds." But Whiskers wasn't impressed. He leaped from the couch to the coffee table in one fluid motion, never taking his eyes off the Roomba. It was like watching a cowboy prepare for a showdown at high noon. The Roomba, oblivious to the tension it had caused, bumped gently into the coffee table leg, pivoted, and rolled toward the kitchen. Whiskers followed, slinking along the edge of the furniture like a panther stalking prey. "He's fine," Jack said, waving me off. "He'll get used to it." I wasn't so sure. Whiskers wasn't the get-used-to-it type. He was more the burn-it-down and ask-questions-later type. The first clash came later that afternoon when the Roomba innocently rolled under the dining table, where Whiskers liked to nap. I didn't see what happened next, but I heard it. A loud bang followed by an indignant yowl, and the sound of claws skidding across the hardwood floor. By the time I rushed in, Whiskers was perched on the kitchen counter, puffed up like a Halloween decoration, glaring down at the Roomba, which was now stuck under a chair and beeping in confusion. "What did you do?" I asked Whiskers, as if he could explain. Jack just laughed. "It's fine. He's just being dramatic. The Roomba's harmless." I wasn't so sure. Whiskers' glare told a different story, a story of vengeance. The next day, it became clear that Whiskers wasn't going to simply tolerate the Roomba. No, he had declared war. I first noticed it while I was folding laundry. The Roomba had just beeped awake, cheerfully beginning its daily rounds. Whiskers, perched atop his favorite cat tree, narrowed his eyes like a general surveying the battlefield. Then, without warning, he pounced. With a wild leap, Whiskers landed squarely on top of the Roomba. The poor machine, caught off guard, jerked slightly before attempting to move forward. But Whiskers wasn't about to be displaced. He clung to the Roomba like a rodeo cowboy on a bucking bronco, hissing and swiping at it every time it beeped. "Jack!" I yelled, watching the scene unfold. "Whiskers is attacking the Roomba." Jack ran in just in time to see the Roomba spin around in confusion, now carrying a very angry, very determined feline. "Whiskers, no!" he shouted, rushing to grab him. But Whiskers was faster. With a final hiss, he leaped off the Roomba, knocking over a potted plant in the process. The poor Roomba, now smeared with dirt and sporting a fresh scratch on its shiny surface, beeped sadly and retreated to its charging station. "I think he won," I said, biting back a laugh. Jack groaned, scooping up the mess. "It's a vacuum. How does a cat win against a robot?" "He's Whiskers," I said. "He doesn't lose." The Roomba, now battle-worn, resumed its duties later that afternoon. But Whiskers was ready for round two. This time, he didn't bother with a full frontal attack. Instead, he went guerrilla style. He waited until the Roomba rolled into the hallway, where he had strategically placed one of his toys, a small, squeaky mouse. The Roomba, doing its job, sucked up the toy and immediately stopped, beeping in confusion. Jack sighed as he bent down to extract the mouse. He's sabotaging it now. He's a tactical genius, I said, watching Whiskers from across the room. He sat on the windowsill, licking his paw with an air of smug satisfaction. After Whiskers' tactical toy sabotage, the Roomba seemed hesitant. I know it's just a robot, but there was something in the way it beeped and slowly crept around corners that felt almost like fear. Meanwhile, Whiskers lounged on his cat tree like a king surveying his conquered domain. I think the Roomba's afraid of him, I said half joking, as the vacuum stopped just short of the couch and pivoted away like it didn't want to risk going near Whiskers. Jack rolled his eyes. It's a machine. It doesn't have emotions. Tell that to Whiskers, I replied, pointing at the smug furball. He knows he's won. But Jack was determined. We didn't spend $400 on a Roomba for it to be bullied by a cat. I'm fixing this. Jack spent the next hour training the Roomba. By training, I mean he programmed it to avoid the areas Whiskers frequented, like under the dining table and the couch. See, he said proudly, pointing at the updated app on his phone. Problem solved. At first, it seemed to work. The Roomba stuck to its new routes, and Whiskers seemed satisfied, barely glancing up from his naps as it hummed along the edges of the room. But peace was short-lived. Whiskers, ever the opportunist, discovered the Roomba's Achilles heel, the charging dock. One morning, I walked into the living room to find the Roomba beeping frantically, its dock completely missing. Jack, I called. Whiskers stole the dock. We found it later under the couch, surrounded by a pile of Whiskers' toys. It was as if he had claimed it as a trophy. Jack tried to put the dock back in its place, but Whiskers wasn't having it. He swatted at Jack's hand, then pounced on the Roomba as it beeped to life. In his frenzy, he accidentally hit the power button, sending the Roomba rolling backward into the coffee table. The table shook, and my mug of coffee tipped over, spilling everywhere. Whiskers jumped back, his tail puffed up like a bottle brush, while Jack stood there, staring at the mess. That's it, Jack shouted, throwing his hands in the air. The Roomba's going back to the store. No, it's not, I said, biting back a laugh. We're not letting Whiskers win. Jack glared at the cat, who was now cleaning his paw like he hadn't just caused total chaos. He already has. After the coffee spill, we decided to take a break from the Roomba experiment. Jack begrudgingly put it back in its box, muttering something about return policies and cats being a menace. Whiskers, however, strutted around the living room like he'd just conquered a rival kingdom. He's too proud of himself, I said, watching him rub against the now-empty charging station like it was a trophy. Jack crossed his arms. Well, he's not winning. I'll figure something out. But Whiskers was already acting like the war was over. He stretched out on the floor where the Roomba used to roam, rolling onto his back as if to say, "This is my house now." That evening, Jack came home with reinforcements, an upgraded Roomba. This one was supposedly smarter and quieter. What's the plan here? I asked, raising an eyebrow. You think this one's going to outsmart Whiskers? This one has laser navigation, Jack said confidently. It won't get stuck or flinch if the cat gets in its way. The new Roomba beeped to life, scanning the room with a red laser that immediately caught Whiskers' attention. He froze, crouching low like a hunter spotting prey. This won't end well, I whispered. Whiskers crept closer, his tail swishing in slow, deliberate movements. The Roomba hummed forward, pivoting smoothly around furniture. It was clearly better than its predecessor, but Whiskers wasn't about to let that slide. The moment the Roomba entered the kitchen, Whiskers launched himself after it. This time, instead of attacking directly, he began herding it, blocking its path, swiping at it just enough to make it pivot in a different direction. It looks like he's playing soccer with it, I said, trying not to laugh. Jack groaned. He's not playing. He's tormenting it. The Roomba beeped as it tried to navigate around Whiskers, who now seemed to enjoy standing directly in its way. Every time the Roomba turned, Whiskers would dart ahead, blocking its path again. You have to admit he's got skills, I said. He's got attitude, Jack muttered. Whiskers' antics finally came to a head when the Roomba tried to dock. As soon as the vacuum aligned itself with the charging station, Whiskers leaped in front of it, blocking the dock entirely. The Roomba beeped in frustration, trying again and again to align itself, but Whiskers refused to move. Are you serious right now? Jack said, throwing his hands up. Whiskers gave him a slow blink, the ultimate cat insult, and stretched out lazily in front of the dock. That's it, Jack declared. I'm calling customer support. There has to be a way to keep the cat away from this thing. Good luck with that, I said, shaking my head. You're not just fighting Whiskers. You're fighting nature. Jack, ever the problem solver, was determined not to let Whiskers win. He spent the better part of the next morning on the phone with customer support, explaining the bizarre battle between our Roomba and our cat. So, you're saying the cat is blocking the Roomba? The support rep asked, clearly trying not to laugh. Yes, Jack replied, rubbing his temple. And it's not just blocking, it's sabotaging. He's stolen the dock, herded it into corners, and now he's physically preventing it from charging. There was a long pause. Sir, the rep finally said, I don't think there's a feature for dealing with territorial cats. Jack hung up, defeated. Meanwhile, Whiskers was reveling in his victory. He had claimed the Roomba's dock as his personal throne, lounging on it like a king surveying his domain. Any time the Roomba tried to return, he'd lazily stretch out a paw and bat at it, sending it spinning off course. He's mocking you, I said, biting back a laugh as Jack glared at the cat. I can't believe this, Jack muttered. It's a machine. It's supposed to be smarter than this. Maybe it's smart enough to know when to back down, I teased. Jack didn't respond, instead grabbing a broom and attempting to shoo Whiskers off the dock. Whiskers, of course, didn't budge. He just stared at Jack with that classic cat expression that said, try harder, human. By lunchtime, Jack finally admitted defeat. He unplugged the Roomba's dock and moved it to the guest room, far away from Whiskers' usual haunts. Let's see him try to sabotage it now, he said triumphantly. For a while, it worked. The Roomba went about its business, cleaning the floors without any interference. Whiskers, seemingly uninterested in the new setup, returned to his usual spot by the window, basking in the sun like nothing had happened. I think we've won, Jack said later that evening, watching the Roomba hum contentedly as it returned to its dock. Or maybe he's just letting you think you've won, I replied. For a few days, everything seemed peaceful. The house was clean, Whiskers was calm, and Jack was back to feeling like he'd outsmarted the cat. But deep down, I knew better. Whiskers wasn't the type to let things go. He was plotting something. I could see it in the way his tail flicked whenever the Roomba beeped. And sure enough, it wasn't long before the truce came to an end. Have you ever had a pet that refused to back down? Share your stories in the comments. It happened on a quiet Saturday morning. The house was peaceful, too peaceful. Jack was sipping his coffee. The Roomba was diligently cleaning the living room, and Whiskers was perched on his usual spot by the window, looking deceptively innocent. I think we're finally past the Roomba drama, Jack said, leaning back in his chair. I didn't respond. Whiskers had been suspiciously well-behaved all week, and I knew better than to trust his calm demeanor. He's up to something, I said, eyeing the cat warily. Jack laughed. Come on, he's a cat. What could he possibly? Before he could finish, we heard a loud crash. We both bolted into the living room to find Whiskers sitting on the coffee table, his tail flicking smugly. The Roomba, however, was upside down near the bookshelf, its wheels spinning helplessly in the air. It didn't take long to figure out what had happened. Whiskers had clearly lured the Roomba under the bookshelf, where one of his toys, a rubber ball, was strategically placed. When the Roomba hit the ball, it bounced back and tipped over, leaving the poor robot stranded like a turtle on its back. "Are you kidding me?" Jack exclaimed, rushing to rescue the Roomba. Whiskers yawned dramatically, as if to say, "I have no idea what you're talking about." Jack picked up the Roomba, inspecting it for damage. "This is Sabotage. This cat is waging psychological warfare." "Well," I said, trying not to laugh, "he's clearly winning." After the bookshelf incident, Jack decided it was time to bring the dock back into the living room. "I'm not letting him dictate where this thing can go," he declared, placing the dock in its original spot. Whiskers watched from his perch, his eyes narrowing. The moment the Roomba started cleaning again, Whiskers leaped into action. He followed the vacuum with calculated precision, staying just out of its reach, but always close enough to make it uncomfortable. Every time the Roomba pivoted, Whiskers was there, ready to block its path. "He's taunting it," I said, shaking my head. Jack groaned. "How is this my life? I'm being outsmarted by a cat." The next morning, we awoke to find the Roomba missing. The dock was still in place, but the vacuum itself was nowhere to be seen. "Where's the Roomba?" Jack asked, looking around the room. "Check under the couch," I suggested. Sure enough, there it was, wedged deep under the couch, completely covered in cat fur. Whiskers had somehow managed to drag it there, leaving it stuck and powerless. Jack pulled it out, his face a mix of frustration and disbelief. "That's it. I give up. Whiskers wins." From his spot on the cat tree, Whiskers blinked slowly, his victory assured. After the couch incident, Jack officially threw in the towel. "That's it," he said, pointing at Whiskers, who was lounging on the windowsill with an air of smug satisfaction. "You win. The Roomba is retired." I tried not to laugh as Jack packed the poor, battle-worn vacuum back into its box. "Are you really giving up?" I asked. "What else can I do?" he said, gesturing at Whiskers. "This cat isn't just fighting the Roomba. He's waging a full-scale war. I'm not equipped for this level of psychological manipulation." Whiskers stretched lazily, his tail flicking in what could only be described as a victory dance. Without the Roomba, Jack reluctantly returned to old-fashioned vacuuming. But even that wasn't safe from Whiskers' antics. Every time Jack pulled out the upright vacuum, Whiskers would dart out from under the couch to swipe at the cord or jump in front of it, forcing Jack to stop. "He's not just anti-Roomba," Jack muttered. "He's anti-cleaning." I, on the other hand, found Whiskers' antics hilarious. "Maybe he's just trying to keep you humble," I teased. But Jack wasn't laughing. "I'll show him. I'll get a cleaning gadget he can't sabotage." "Oh no," I said, shaking my head. "Don't." But it was too late. Jack was already Googling cat-proof cleaning solutions. A week later, Jack came home with another box. "Meet the Mopbot," he said, grinning triumphantly. "It's smaller, quieter, and there's no way Whiskers can mess with it." I raised an eyebrow. "You really think this is going to work?" Jack nodded confidently. "Absolutely." When we turned the Mopbot on, Whiskers immediately perked up. He watched intently as it began gliding silently across the floor, spraying and mopping as it went. For a moment, it seemed like Jack had finally found a solution. But then Whiskers, in true Whiskers fashion, pounced. Whiskers leaped onto the Mopbot, claws extended, and promptly slid across the wet floor like a furry hockey puck. The Mopbot beeped in protest as Whiskers scrambled to regain his footing, leaving behind a trail of muddy paw prints. Jack groaned. "I should have known." Whiskers, undeterred, swatted at the Mopbot one last time before retreating to the safety of his cat tree. The Mopbot, now smeared with water and dirt, beeped sadly before returning to its dock. "Well, that was short-lived," I said, wiping tears of laughter from my eyes. Jack sighed. "Why do I even try?" Jack's frustration with Whiskers had reached its peak. "I just want clean floors," he muttered one morning, staring at the muddy tracks left by Whiskers' latest mop-related adventure. "Is that too much to ask? You're not fighting dirt. I said, sipping my coffee. You're fighting a mastermind. Whiskers, sitting regally on the windowsill, flicked his tail in agreement. But Jack wasn't ready to admit total defeat. If I can't outsmart Whiskers, he said, then maybe I can distract him. What do you mean? I asked. Jack pulled out his phone, scrolling through a website. I'm buying him a new cat toy, something so engaging, he won't even notice the cleaning gadgets. 2 days later, the ultimate distraction arrived, an automatic laser pointer. It had multiple speed settings, random patterns, and a built-in timer. If anything could keep Whiskers occupied, this was it. Watch this, Jack said proudly as he set the laser pointer on the floor and turned it on. The red zipped across the room, and Whiskers' eyes immediately locked onto it. With a chirp of excitement, he leaped off his perch and bolted after it, skidding around corners and pouncing on invisible prey. It's working, Jack said, grinning triumphantly. While Whiskers was fully engaged in the chase, Jack turned on the mopbot. For a glorious 5 minutes, the robot glided across the floor unbothered, cleaning up the mess Whiskers had made earlier. This is genius, Jack said, leaning back in his chair. But Jack's victory was short-lived. Whiskers, ever the cunning strategist, quickly realized the laser wasn't his true enemy. He paused mid-pounce, his head tilting as he turned his attention back to the mopbot. Oh, I said, watching as Whiskers abandoned the laser to stalk the cleaning robot once again. This time, Whiskers employed a new tactic. He jumped onto the mopbot and sprawled out, letting the robot carry him across the floor like a king on a throne. Oh, come on! Jack groaned as the mopbot beeped in distress, unable to clean with a 12-pound cat lounging on top of it. I couldn't stop laughing. You've just given him a free ride. By the end of the day, Whiskers had fully claimed the mopbot as his personal chariot. Any time Jack turned it on, Whiskers would hop on, riding it around the house like a miniature parade float. The mopbot, unable to fulfill its purpose, became little more than a glorified cat toy. I give up, Jack said, throwing his hands in the air. The cat wins. He owns this house now. Whiskers, perched on his new throne, blinked slowly in approval. Jack finally called a truce in his battle against Whiskers. The Roomba, the mopbot, and every other cleaning gadget had been thoroughly defeated, leaving Whiskers as the undisputed ruler of the household. Fine, Jack muttered one evening, watching Whiskers ride the mopbot around the living room like a feline emperor. He wins. The house belongs to him now. I patted Jack on the back. It's not so bad. Think of it this way. At least we have a cat who knows what he wants. Whiskers, as if to punctuate the point, stretched lazily and rolled onto his back, the mopbot beeping in protest under his weight. With the gadgets retired, Jack reluctantly returned to manual cleaning. It's peaceful without the robots, I joked as Jack vacuumed under the couch. Peaceful, he grumbled. He's still plotting something, I can feel it. Whiskers, watching from the safety of his cat tree, yawned dramatically as if to say, You're not worth my time anymore. Despite the chaos, the house found a new rhythm. Whiskers had his throne, the mopbot. Jack had his old vacuum, and I had a front-row seat to the ongoing antics of our cat's reign of terror. One afternoon, Grandma stopped by for a visit. She took one look at Whiskers lounging on the mopbot and burst out laughing. That cat owns you, she said, pointing at Jack. Jack sighed. Yeah, thanks for the reminder. Grandma leaned in, whispering loud enough for Whiskers to hear. You know, there's a reason cats were worshipped in ancient Egypt. They've always known they're in charge. Whiskers blinked at her slowly, his tail flicking with satisfaction. From that day on, the mopbot became a permanent part of our home, not as a cleaning tool, but as Whiskers' personal vehicle. Visitors marveled at the sight of our cat riding his chariot, and Jack eventually came to terms with his defeat. I guess this is just life now, he said one evening, watching Whiskers nap on the idle mopbot. Life with Whiskers, I said with a grin, and honestly, I wouldn't have it any other way. What's the most ridiculous thing your pet has ever claimed as their own? Do you think Jack should have kept fighting, or was surrender the right call? Let me know in the comments.